Welcome to the Chaos March. Whoops, that's not correct. This is the Ishiyama Black Mountain Cup hosted by Unbroken, and it has been a lot of fun for us so far. Smoke Jaguar was able to defeat their opponent in the first one in a fun and engaging game. We thank the Hung Boys for playing with us, and we are now, and that's the team name, by the way. And we are now in the process of playing our other opponents. And you know what? Folks, we're playing
Oh,
LCAF.
what just happened?
We're in a streamers channel, a separate streamers channel, kind of like Shivoxy is. So fire it up when you're ready. And do you want me to welcome folks? This is Vic Viper, Khan of the Smoke Jaguars. I'm Sucon Duelist. Viper, do you want me to cover one specific team, the whole match, or anything?
It doesn't matter. I'll probably be floating around watching the whole battle.
All right. Why don't we say, why don't you give a preference to covering our boys, and I will give a preference to covering LCAF. That way we have video from both, but definitely feel free to switch back and forth. Like at the moment, we're about to have a fight at center.
Oh,
So,
are we? So I haven't even.
so Vic, TC Phlegeton, a 400, like a 300-degree map, and big with a lot of rocks. Once you get in there, what kind of strategy, if you were the commander of the Jaguar team, what would you be focusing on during this battle? As we have our first action now. LCAF has three light assets against four Jaguars.
Is it a terrain control map?
Terrain control map. All of them are in this event. Okay, we have a 5-on-4 fight at center now, and Kidsin is getting hit pretty hard. So Viper, if I told you it's the hottest map in the entire game, and you were about to play a terrain control battle in it, would you still use your go-to solitaire, or would you think about another asset?
I'd probably switch to a light gas asset.
Kidsin down. Jaguars are not trading favorably here. Now it's 6-on-5, so you might go for something like the Osiris E with excellent heat management and maneuverability with great range. Jaguars are getting pretty beat up here. They are not trading
But
favorably.
at this point, the Euler with the Gauss rifle on it would be an interesting asset to start off with a
Yes.
little bit of C-bill transferring.
Well, it looks like the Jaguars, who have committed their entire force to fight over center, are going to get pushed back. They still have a few up, but it's not looking good at the moment. Now they do get Bolter, and well, just as I say that, Viper, it looks like the Jaguars have in fact turned them back now. They have one damaged asset and one fresh asset to take care of, and then otherwise there's a sniper. But I think Viper that the LCAF guys are just going to move to the side bases, and it's unfortunately hard to see which bases belong to who in the spectate mode. You remember playing this map, Viper? Phlegeton?
Yeah, Phlegeton usually devolves into a LRM slash Aerofest towards the end of the map each time.
Mhm. And look at that, Viper. Our boys found a way to survive that fight and now have captured center. Unfortunately for them, though, there are no repairs or ammo at that base. Those are at the side bases. Viper, for this fight, I ended up making a few substitutions. I subbed out for Templar just to give myself a bit of a break, and then also Cairo was replaced by Rask. So we have a little bit of changes to our team, but still largely the same one that had the victory in the first battle.
The Jaguars would be best to start focusing on a little bit of LBX fire as well. Some of the tactics that are going to be used on the other team are going to be battle armor. You'll see a lot of that.
Probably something we'll keep an eye out for, and I know that rotary autocannons are definitely going to be out. We've tried those in this map. It is horrendous. You get it through about a quarter clip before you overheat. And I think you're right, Viper. Ammunition-based distance weapons are going to be the go-to here. As LCAF begins to reassemble their forces, they have 5 assets, all still lights moving forward. Excuse me, there's one Chimera. They also smartly, in my opinion, Viper have brought a radar asset, a Raven. In our last battle, not trying to give away state secrets, but I had a Raven the entire game, and that was we were able to see the enemy before they came. Sometimes information is critical in these battles, Vic.
Draconian 666 might be having an issue here.
Well, that's Rask. At the moment, LCAF is going to take back center, largely. Yeah, good. We're watching the same thing. Now, Viper, you see how hard it is to handle this the center map. There's too many places for an enemy ambush from the sides, and too many places to hide in the center. Would you concentrate your forces on center, or would you concentrate on trying to hold all the other bases?
If it was me, I'd concentrate on the outer bases. That center base tends to be a kill zone.
Yep, as there are, as we mentioned earlier, there are no benefits to center other than once you capture it, you have it. And it does look like the Jaguars do have forces on the outside sniping. So maybe they won't give it up without a fight, but I do believe that LCAF has captured the base now at this point. Now, as a commander in just a general TC game, Vic, what do you prioritize that you're shooting? You've got 3, 4 things in front of you. What are the things you look for to tell everybody what to focus on?
Generally, you want to focus on the lighter assets first and then the heavier assets second. If you happen to focus fire on a heavier asset when there's a bunch of lighter assets around it, the heavier asset will tank damage while the little ones will continue to fire at you.
Okay, so take out take out a pilot. That's one less thing you have to worry about because even a mech with one small laser, if you're not focusing on it, can shoot your back out if you're not careful. Now, it looks like the Jaguars have built about a 28-point ticket lead, and it looks like that they're happy utilizing your strategy, Viper. Let them have center. We'll attack at times, but we're going to take the repair and ammo bases away.
And there's that as well. If you can pent up your enemy aggressors in the center, they'll have neither repairs nor ammo to get themselves out of that rut.
I have a bit of lunch. Part of the reason I'm taking a break. Viper, a big difference in this match compared to our last one, and especially compared to a lot of the public train control you see these days, is there's no flying on this map. This is all ground-based assets, and excuse me, there are VTOLs on this map, but this map is 400 degrees, and the ceiling is not that great. So, how does your mindset change if you don't have to worry about flying things during a train control battle?
Uh, I do believe there is air assets on this map.
I could very well be mistaken. It's been a while since I've played on this. Um,
Yeah, I do believe there is an aircraft hangar where aerospace fighters can be spawned at.
Okay, then I'll change my question, partner. How does a 400-degree temperature on a map affect your fighting in an aircraft or a VTOL? Does it limit your maneuverability? Do you have to be careful of your weapon selections?
You'll want to focus on direct fire weapons when you see aircraft in the air, especially on a hot map. So on a map such as this, your Gauss rifles, your LBXs, and things like that will be highly beneficial to you. On a map like this, aerospace fighters tend to have greater heat efficiency than the mechs. So if you can control the sky, you can somewhat control the battlefield. On the other hand, if you do have too many players up in the sky, you won't have players to capture points, which would work against you. Henceforth, it being a terrain control map.
Excellent insight as always, Viper. It looks like that the LCAF players have captured one of the side bases and have been able to repair. And as we have this spectacular explosion at center, it looks like we're gearing up for another fight. Kidsin is caught between 3 enemy assets, but he's backed up by Rook. But at the moment, if Kidsin's not careful, he's going to be focused 3-on-1 here, Viper.
Looks to me like he's already recognized the danger and got himself to safety.
And each team now utilizing a Raven. I think that that's an excellent decision here. Vic, it's a bit weird. There are actually half the Ravens now don't have the C3 shared radar, so you still have the excellent radar package, but you're the only one that can see it. And I tell you,
Oof, that's worthy of a replay right there. That focused firing on that Raven. Fire came from two different locations at the exact same time.
well, Viper, SJ has committed 5 assets to center, and Bolter is now getting that focused fire, and this is kind of what happened last time, Viper. You get a lot of kills early on, especially if you're in lights. You can start to distribute money well, and before you know it, you're on the opposite team in lights and mediums facing heavies and assaults. But at this stage, Viper, obviously LCAF has fallen into a small bit of a hole. Definitely can recover from it. But would you suggest that they alter their tactics in any way based on what you've seen so far? Because obviously it's hard for us to see what bases that they have. But from my end, at least, Vic, it seems so far that they've favored a strategy of splitting their forces a bit, trying to stay on top of the cap points. But then they've been engaging in full scale warfare with SJ, often down a man or two. Uh, is running a murder ball, running all of your assets at once, something that you can sustain in a terrain control battle?
And as you can see here, they've switched over to utilizing them Gauss rifles on the Eulers. A very good heat efficiency mech. High damage, good efficiency.
And now Femur is trying to get away to capture center with assets coming after him. And I'm going to switch to local spectate now so we can see what they're doing. The other thing, Viper, the turrets at center are numerous and painful when you're trying to concentrate on other mechs shooting you, trying to get in the cap zone. That's a lot to think about taking the center base. And I think that Femur may be able to get away here. He's got one ally in the midst, but
Oh, we have another critical. That Warhammer might be in trouble.
oof. Really the thing with those crits, Viper, is that if there's a battle still ongoing and you get blinded from that, that can be that 2 second difference in not being able to fire on the enemy can mean the difference between victory and defeat in a battle. Looks like Femur trying to get some support from Aredo now, but Kid's in an undamaged mech, so Femur's going to go down, most likely. Although Kid's in himself is only in an Osiris. So it looks like the battle's elsewhere. Viper, I'm watching center right now, and I'm only seeing 3 or 4 assets. Is there action going on in other parts of the map?
Oh yes, and they're fighting over that one base up in the top left corner of the map.
All right.
No one's pulling any punches either.
Kids in brought a friend, and they're going to clean up at center now. Actually brought half the forces of SJ are now at center, and a Rado and an Ares to defend. Still a pretty close match, Viper, but once you start to get to 75, 100 tickets down, it starts to change your strategy. How important is speed in a terrain control game on a map like this?
Very. In fact, moving up to assaults is never in your best interest in a terrain control map.
LCAF repairing their Warhammer, Chimera, and Chevalier at one of the side bases. What are some of your favorite speed assets to use in a match like this, Viper?
Speed assets would be the Black Liners, the Mad Cats, the Thanatai, all speedy mechs that boat large amounts of weaponry.
LCAF now amassing up. And there, I have completed dinner. Now, Vic, earlier in the match, you suggested that if you have a murder ball and you're trying to focus targets, that you often want to pick the lightest asset, so it goes down faster. But do you ever worry about who the pilot is? If you see a top tier pilot like a Proxima or a Carbonell, is there ever a situation where you want to focus on that instead?
I personally don't focus on player names.
LCAF doing a good job so far of focusing fire here as they move up to try and get into center, but I'm a bit curious as to why they're moving up to shoot SJ on the outside rather than move inside the blast walls for cover. Vic, it's a very tight game now. They've brought it down to under 30, so they can play how they wish. But there are certain situations in which sometimes you just have to say tickets are more important than kills and grab yourself your solitaire or your Black Lantern and run around and capture bases. But uh, do you ever see in terrain control very often that teams will assign 2 or 3 people of their team and go to a base while the rest of the force works on the main area? Is it ever beneficial to split up your forces?
It can be, especially if you're working on a ticket bleed. If your main force ties up enemy forces at a single base, two or even one other player can go and cap a different base.
And now Arado is battling Rook Zero and another SJ at one of the side bases. Now Arado has 3-on-1, 3 lights on him. Uh, but when you're in lights, Viper, it's critical that if you're dealing with something 50 tons heavier than you, that you focus fire. Because if you don't, those weapons can add up pretty quickly.
Teamwork is an asset when fighting something much larger than yourself.
Unfortunately for Arado here, the Jaguars were able to bring in their 4 assets, and Arado went down. And Viper, that's one of the downsides of bringing heavier assault asset is that if you get caught alone like that and you go down, you're costing your team sometimes almost 10, 12 tickets. And it looks like that there actually is a mech bay in one of the side bases. I was not aware of this or forgot, so the Jaguars are actually building on the side of the map at the moment. Viper, there's been a trend in recent maps to limit side bases to 65 tons on under, that you can't repair anything heavier, you can't buy anything heavier. But this is one of those old school custom maps that that's not the case. And do you feel that it really changes things, that being able to have a side base and build anything without restriction?
It does do changes the battleground quite a bit when you're able to limit those larger assets from repairing.
Rado trying to get back in with the Mad Cat, and Vic, very quickly, the LCAF team is getting in heavier assets, but not all of them are fast. Bolter is using a Warhammer, which is only 64 kph, and I think, like you mentioned earlier, that if you have the ability to, that you do want to focus on speed here. But Warhammer's good at long range, decent on heat, but if you have to cover the entire map, you're taking yourself out of battle for a minute or two while you repair. Now, the hats off to LCAF Viper. We can't see the bases at the moment for who owns what, but LCAF is keeping this a very tight fight. With only a 4 point difference now. So that earlier when they were down 50 tickets, they've been able to do that. And Vic, you are correct. There is full aircraft and full VTOL on this map, but so far neither team choosing to utilize that. As we approach as we start to get near halfway through, Carbonell and Kidson are now moving up in their 2 heavies, attacking the damaged Bolter and his ally. The Jaguars going with 2 Gauss Vultures. Vic, those things are dangerous and hurt if you get hit by them. Bolter's Warhammer will now go down. He's trying to do as much damage as he can before he goes, and there he goes. And looks like the Jaguars will be able to move into center now. Center will be defended by a Chevalier and a Light and Viper. Sometimes you just have to decide to run. You see something you can't take on coming in. It's better to live another day and take another base than it is to die and give up tickets. How do you, for you, what's the line? What's your decision that I can take this on or I need to run?
Oh, when the odds are very much stacked against you, sometimes bleeding a few tickets is better than bleeding 10 tickets.
True. So there are times that even if you are in a light and there are a bunch of heavies, there, if you can hold that base for 45 seconds, that way you're actually gaining tickets. Compared to if you run and let them take it immediately. But Vic, at the moment, the Jaguars want center very badly and have committed 3 Gauss Vultures, a Mad Cat, a Thor, and an Ares tank. So LCAF is going to have to regroup here, and let's see how they respond. Now, Viper, this map, as we continue to say, is just ridiculously hot. It's even hotter than Extremity. How long do you think it took these pilots to adjust to that heat, had they not played on this map before?
It looks like both teams here have had direction from their drop commanders to watch their heat and take assets are not too hot. Because right from the get-go, I've noticed that both teams were taking mechs that were better at dealing with the heat on this map.
So the commanders will just take that choice out of their hands, saying somebody tries to build Nova Cat with all lasers, they'll be like, nope. Now,
Take note of how the battlefield has evolved to a lot of long-range Gauss assets. The only one so far I've seen that's using energy weapons would be Evan, who looks like he's in a Mad Cat E.
Yep, and
That'd be dual PPCs and ATM 12s.
Evan's been with us for about 3 weeks, and one of the reasons he's in that Viper is because he decided to get good at 1 or 2 assets while he learned the game, and that's one of them. And as long as he's careful with those PPCs, I think those ATMs chain fired. He might be right now. LCAF is smartly, in my opinion, brought an APC and hit it near center, so that if it is clear or if they wish to just spam battle armor, they are able. That leaves it. If you lose the base, you can capture it quickly. You can grab ammo, and you can also use quick respawns with a bunch of 1-ticket assets. Vic, once you realize you're facing a lot of APCs, how much attention do you pay in a game like this to try and hunt down an enemy APC near a base?
At the moment that you realize that there is an APC, hunting it down is mostly beneficial to you because having battle armor that will consistently retake that base from you could be devastating if you're consistently bleeding tickets.
Now, we've had a good turnout today for a lot of the teams, Viper, and the Jaguars. We've been, I believe, 11 strong at our peak, and given how little I advertise this among our clan, I think that's pretty good, and I think that's pretty neat to see everybody show up. And I'm curious to see how they all work together. This is really only the second time that we've had the full clan together in the past 2 months or so battling. Of course, the thing with the battle armor, though, Viper, is that it can be advantageous at the start, but if you stay too long, you're effectively removing an asset from the field. Because unless you're the world's greatest badass, as we call battle armors, you're going to be down at least 25 tons, if not more like 50 or 75. And also, the BA can only pull 60 kph Viper, so it's important to keep track of the situation when you're as a battle armor to make sure that you're still doing a favor for your team. Now it looks like that LCAF also now has access to a side base as well, and I believe that this will speed up the engagements at center. And almost Viper, I think this match is going to start playing out a lot like TC Mirage, where each team has a side base and a big map. It turns into a smaller one very quickly. Still a very tight game. The Jaguars down by 5 tickets now at this point, so very competitive. We're seeing very good teamwork, Viper. Having somebody like a Proxima can mean so much to a team. Being able to see the entire battlefield, anticipate things before they happen, and utilize. I think the key to one of these things, Viper, is just trying to realize what your teammates are good at. Tell them to get in assets that fit their skill set, and just putting them in advantageous situations. Because as you mentioned earlier, Viper, teamwork is absolutely critical to these terrain control games. And now Mansa Banter at center, battling Proximal, yeah, battling
Proximan.
Proximan, battling 4 assets, and Viper. That's a 50-ton tank taking out 200 tons of assets, and there's just not much you can do in that situation, but just try to fire. Viper, you're right that this has evolved into a snipe fest of sorts. We actually have the Jaguars on one side of the crater and a few members of LCAF on the other, and even though they're only 700 meters apart, they're treating this like they're 1,200 meters apart. Are you surprised that we haven't seen any air so far, Viper?
I am. I would have thought to have seen at least one bomber in by now.
All right, be right back. Now, how many backcappers do you need? If you start losing too many bases and you decide that you need to have some people disengage from the main fight and try to run around capturing bases, can one person do that, or do you want to send two, three? What's a good backcapping strategy usually in a game?
About 2 people would be a good backcapping strategy. 2 fast assets.
Now, would you have them go to different bases, or is it a good idea to have them go together to protect them?
No, I would have them go together because they would both cap the base faster and be able to support each other if they run into problems.
Now, so far, the teams are, I would dare say, equal in both skill and coordination and strategy, as the kills look rather favorable, and the Jaguars do have some advantage in the kills, but I think that LCAF is doing a good job of countering with doing a lot of damage with assets lighter than the Jaguars. And sometimes Viper, you need to do that. You just need to engage as much as you can in a lighter asset until you can afford something to attack. Because if the enemy all has heavies or really good mediums, and you guys are still stuck in lights and not so good mediums, you have to gap that money sometimes.
What I find very interesting is going on right now is the Jaguars are using the proper tactic. Instead of fighting inside that base, they're waiting for the LCAF to try and retake the base, which forces them into a position to take damage.
Okay. And so you think that the good sight lines from the outside and the closer proximity to the repair bases is the way to go, and that if you end up needing to cap it, you just send in one asset to do it, and then so it's all about speed. Another way is speed is knowing after you've engaged the enemy and taken care of them, knowing when do we repair, when do we pull back, when do we upgrade, because you never know that you kill that first wave of enemies that they suddenly bring back a bunch of solitaires to finish you off when you're damaged. Awareness is
It,
important in this
it
game, isn't
it
it?
would seem that the LCAF actually control more bases than the smoke jags at the moment.
As we would indicate from ticket bleed.
Yes, because it does look like that the SJs are bleeding tickets.
Now, now, Vic, you can certainly make up for a one or maybe even two base disadvantage by just cleaning the enemy of relieving the enemy of their mechs, because mechs do cost tickets. But if you're not doing that at a fast enough rate, you certainly are going to have to think about changing your strategy to prioritizing base capture. The other thing that I'm noticing is that they've brought a Black Lantern onto the field. Femur for now has a Black Lantern and now has enough speed that if they need to counter a base, they can. Let's see if the Jaguars have a fast asset to counter in case that they have to go defend something. And Viper, no, at the moment the Jaguars all have 90 kph or slower assets, so that might be something to keep an eye out on if one team decides to go fast, one of the fastest assets in game, and decides to run around you. And now Vic, either via kills or via bases, the Jaguars have opened up a 30 ticket lead. So I think that they've corrected that. But as we reach the last half of the match, what adjustments would you see, if any, that you would recommend both teams to make?
So far, they seem to have all strategies covered. If anything, the Jaguars might start wanting to think about playing a little more aggressive, retaking one of the other opposite bases. Because I have turned the tide and killed off the LCAF quite a few times now. If they were to do a major aggressive push, they might be able to push LCAF all the way back to their main base.
Viper, do you remember what LCAF stands for? I think Lyrian Commonality Assault Force is my best guess. Does that sound about
Lyran
right?
Commonwealth Assault Force.
Okay. And then SJ, of course, Clan Smoke Jaguar. Um, Now, LCAF has been an up and coming unit in Living Legends Viper. We're friendly with one of their leaders, Zone Warden, and then Monty, who comes and play. Monty comes and plays with us a lot on the pubs, and I think that they're a clan unit to keep an eye on. Viper. They not only are holding up well against a coordinated Jaguar team, but are usually a force to be reckoned with, either individual pilots or as a team when we see them in the public games. Vic, something else I'm surprised we haven't seen. I know you would have to compensate it for the heat, but that said, given the fact that the two teams are basically engaging in the same area time after time, and it's pretty flat ground, I'm very surprised that we haven't seen Proxima get an Arrow 4 unit, or dare I say a Long Tom, and start to clear that area out effectively. But do you think that the heat is the reason that they haven't?
Yeah, on this map, both the Long Tom and Arrow Force would be uh, ineffective due to their heat restrictions.
And you think that even if they were able to utilize the heat management, that it would be enough of a threat that the enemy team would just focus on it, and would be hard for it to get away. Now that said, Viper, planes have enough, can get away from the enemy enough with the vertical airspace that they have, that I am very
Uh-oh.
surprised.
Kidsonworth here is he might have gotten himself into trouble overextending.
Well, he does have some help coming in though. Four Jaguars right around the edge, and Evan did a good job here of cutting in on Avatar's path, and now it is Avatar that has to pull back. Um, Vic, one thing I am very surprised though, I'm very surprised somebody hasn't grabbed a VTOL at this point, both for radar to track where the enemy is, and then also, frankly, just for base capturing, because it's very easy for a VTOL to hover in, capture, and then it has such radar that they can avoid it. But so far, both teams are committed to ground forces and even largely mechs. I mean, we've seen an APC, we've seen the occasional small tank, but mechs rule the day on this map so far. As the Jaguars have opened up their largest lead of the game now at 64 tickets. Viper, there's not a lot of time left in this match, and if you're getting down 60, 70 tickets, you're going to have to prioritize base capture, aren't you?
Yeah, base caps or the ticket bleed would be a lot beneficial, because even if they don't get any kills, if they can hold that base ticket bleed for the next 9 minutes, it would be a considerable amount of tickets.
Now the Jaguars seem content. As you mentioned, you thought that they might get a bit aggressive, but so far they've been pretty content to let the enemy come to them near center, and they'll occasionally send an asset after an LCAF if they capture side base. Kind of, as you can see, Rook Zero right now firing LRMs off on Fear of Fear and his Warhammer. But Viper, it's difficult in a 7v7 if LCAF in fact does have a base deficit at the moment. Sorry about that, folks. That you need to split your forces definitely at this point, but you need to be careful to still have enough with you that when you encounter the enemy.
On that note, it's starting to look like Jaguars are going to start doing their push. Looks like they're comfortable with their ticket lead to maybe risk a few deaths.
As Bolter has brought out an Atlas, Rook Zero utilizing the speed that you mentioned earlier with his Black Lantern. LCAF starting to send about half of their team together around this Atlas, and SJ only has 2 members in the area. But yeah, Vic, I think you're right that the ticket lead is enough now that the Jaguars are going to try and bring the fight deeper into LCAF territory, and if they can just keep them away from bases, keep them tied up battling, that it might actually, dare I say, at this point, be enough as they near 100 tickets, enough that the Jaguars just need to avoid losing too many bases, that they may have a path to victory here.
Interesting thing to note here is that the Jaguars have been content getting all their players into the uh, same weight ratio assets. You don't see any lone wolf assaults here. Everyone got into mediums, everyone got into heavies all at the same time.
So you think it was coordination that, okay, team, we're going to spread our money around here and we're going to wait, even though some of us can upgrade to assaults. We're going to stick to the assets that are appropriate for the situation for our team. Now, Vic, given the hole that LCAF appears to have dug themselves in, they have some pilots there, and the Jaguars do have a lot of Gauss, but I think that I'm very surprised that LCAF isn't desperate enough now to start spamming a few VTOLs or a few solitaires just to get bases. Um, as while the Jaguars are pushing, they are keeping most of their forces together, which should leave a few of the other bases available for capture. There's only 5 minutes left, Viper, and the flip side of that coin is if you don't think that you're going to be able to get enough bases to stop the bleed or even reverse it, it's not an easy strategy. But at some point, you probably have to say that's it. We got to try to do as much damage as we are on kills and try to murder ball. But uh, when you murder ball this late in the game, it has to be focused Fire Viper. You have to have all 7 assets together, firing on the same thing, and if you don't, you're correct. You end up in a situation where, like Bolter is, he's facing a mech superior to his Atlas with speed and Rook Zero's Black Lantern, and there goes 8 tickets once that dies. But Vic, do you think that was the difference in this match?
Oh, they've legged Rook Zero. That was a good strategy on their part, because that Black Lantern was a problem for them for its speed.
And now they have enough
But
forces.
I'm
Go
not
ahead.
entirely certain the trade-off Black Lantern for an Atlas was a worthy one.
Especially considering that Femur has already taken some damage, and they will now be able to build 2 fresh assets here at center, or actually they're just repairing. Templar and Rask are going to have a hard time holding off all three of those assets if they all commit, but that's what the radio's for, Viper. Hey guys, we'll hold off for 30 seconds and come to us. Viper, what was the turning point in this match? It was so close for so long, but then as we got to about 10 minutes left, the Jaguars opened up a big lead. What for you was the difference?
I do believe the difference was that Smoke Jaguar held off getting all their heavier assets until everyone was able to get in one. Another strategy to rob an enemy team of their tickets is to destroy their heavier assets. Because if you're losing heavier assets to a team that's losing light assets, yeah, the numbers just add up.
And LCAF now going to secure this base at least for a little while as Rask pulls out to the edge to try and utilize his range advantage. Viper, another thing that I noticed too is that despite the fact that the Jaguars did not use heavier assets until later in the game, their kill advantage now is arguably almost 2-1. That's a whole nother thing, Viper, is that when your team starts sitting on huge reserves of cash and you can distribute that around to your team or get yourselves in the best assets in game, it can be hard to counter the basis as it is. But once you start once you start having that much, I think Viper, when you have a lot of money, that just ends up giving you more flexibility than the other team because whatever the other team brings out, you can go okay and bring out something to counter that. But you're correct, Vic. Long range assets like Gauss, ground assets, ended up being the preferred weapons of choice here, and ended up working for a while for both teams. But in the end, the Jaguars look like they're going to come out of here with a victory.
Just watching the battle here between Draconian and the other three assets. He's doing quite well for himself. He's already taken down 2 of 3.
Well,
he might have his hands full with this Solitaire, but if he pulls this off, that'll be a 3-1 victory.
Well, Solitaire only has an LBX cannon of noteworthy weapon, and Rask is doing a good job of facing his left side, then his right side, then his back. Spreading damage can be critical in a fight like this, Viper, against a faster asset. That said, though, the Solitaire's got an opening now. When Rask's torsos is out, if he can focus fire. I think one of the things working against Rask here, Viper, is that those Gauss cannons, if you miss, you have to wait so long for them to reload. Well, that was a hell of a fight. You were right, Viper. Avatar though was able to come in and use his speed to his advantage to throw Rask shots off enough, and concentrate with his LBX cannon to do damage. And as we wrap up this fight, Viper, thank you very much for joining us here on the channel. Viper and I will both have some videos up soon, and we'll be sure to host those around. But Vic, when you know you're going to lose a battle, which has been apparent now for the last few minutes. What do you tell your team? What do you focus on as a team? Are there still things that you can do to prepare you for the next fight in a battle that is already lost?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely tell your team, okay, here's what we've done wrong, here's what we can do the next time. Usually at this point, to subside any uh, anger feelings or anything like that, you can basically just play the match out and try to have fun with it.
And Kidson couldn't resist himself. He is now in a Fafnir, but with nothing to shoot. That must be a frustrating situation to be in, to finally upgrade to one of the most badass things in game, and then end up with 3 minutes of sitting around. Now, Vic, one of the things that I'll argue that I thought I saw was after a while, they could see that the Jaguars were perhaps superior in their coordination as a team in terms of killing the enemy and countering what El Cap was bringing out. I was a bit surprised that LCAF didn't commit to one strategy or the other. They seemed to me to split between trying to split their forces and back cap and run around the Jaguars' kill box, and then at other times they would form up and try to attack center. And I just think that it was a good game, but ultimately, from my end, I think that LCAF needed to find a singular strategy and stick to it early on, because this game it won't look close, but this game was 4 tickets, 5 tickets for the first 20 25 minutes, and something changed, Viper, and you could be right with the Jaguars' asset choices. Could be something that we're not seeing that needed to change the strategy for them, but I think that this LCAF team is going to be a force to be reckoned with for the rest of the tournament, Viper. For Vic Viper, this is Duelist. Thank you everybody for watching.